Only 33% of college degrees get used ever. So you have all these people out there borrowing this money, hopefully not, and yet 6 out of 10 of them are never going to use the product they bought. If college was a business, it would go out of business. You don't live to work. You work so that you can, in fact, live. You're all doing it for a reason, and I need to know what that reason is first.
I had this theory years ago. Are you an incubator or an incinerator? Why do you think leaders and business owners choose to be incinerators rather than incubators?
Well, because the ability to be a visionary means that you can hover above, plug yourself in anywhere you want, but then get back to hovering. That's truly how you drive a vision forward.
Today, I'm joined by Ken Rusk. Ken is a best-selling author. He's an entrepreneur. He's a motivational speaker. He's an avid golfer. He also, through his book, Blue Collar Cash, which I have right here, did something which defied the odds during the pandemic when he became a Wall Street Journal best-selling author during that period. He also aims to really set the world of what blue-collar work looks like on its head from the generation that I was a child of, growing up on a farm where it said, if you want anything in your life, you need to leave blue-collar work. Ken does a great job of turning that on its head. I love the book. I'm so excited for this conversation. Ken, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it.
So you're a Buckeye. I'm a Buckeye, meaning we're both from the state of Ohio. We both grew up with shovels in our hands. And as you've talked about in our previous conversation, you're just a ditch digger. But that's so much more. I'd love for you to kind of just start this conversation by, sharing with us in the audience, what does that mean when you say, hey, I just dig ditches?
Well, it's simple, and thank you for that question. It's good to talk to someone who is of like mind. So, when I was 15, my high school shared a fence with an industrial park. And we used to cut through a hole in that fence after school to go hang out at the carryout, which is what kids did back in the day before all the screens came into our life, right? So I remember walking through these businesses, and there was a lot of companies that were just hustling and bustling, energy, things, pieces and parts moving around, grown-up Tonka toys, as they would say. And I needed my first full-time job. I wanted to buy my first new used car. I wanted to take my girlfriend out for pizza, whatever, hang out with my buddies. So I went into one of the businesses one day and I said, hey, what do you guys do here? And they said, we dig ditches. I mean, we repair old, rotten, smelly, wet foundations in basements and stuff. And I said, well, I'm wholly qualified to do that, I'm sure. So I dug ditches in the summertime, and then in the wintertime, I went to work in the office after school. And that kind of let me see the front and the back half of the business, if you will. So I got to know that pretty good over the next 3 years while I was in high school. And then when it came time to go to college, it was, what are you going to do? You're going to go to college, you're going to go work, what are you going to do? And they offered me a job opening up franchises around the Midwest. We had never done it before, so I literally opened the very first company from scratch ever in Columbus, Ohio, and then Cincinnati, and then Pittsburgh and Chicago. And it was a great experience, Tyler, because I got to see everything from scratch. I got to make mistakes with other people's money. It was great, and I got to learn how to open a business. And after doing that for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I got tired of living out of a suitcase, so I moved to Northwest Ohio, where I am today. That was in '86, and I started my own company with 6 people, and I think we have about 200 today. So it's been a hell of a ride.
One thing that, I graduated high school in 1997. And at that point, my parents that graduated, high school in the 60s, they were both first generation college graduates. And, at that point, it's like the path forward in life was go to college and give yourself options. And, then for me, late 90s, and it was like, man, you just have to go to college. I had classmates that went into construction, went into those things, but it was very much if you want to make something in life, you have to go to college. And, you speak a lot of that about in your book, Blue Collar Cash, how that wasn't the position for you. And now, almost 30 years later for me, by the time my son graduates, it'll be 30 years since I graduated high school. And I would contend that the best pathway forward to financial distress is go to college.
Well, when I wrote the book, I did a lot of research on it, and the one thing that even shocked me, because I knew that college was problematic as it relates to everybody going. Okay, first off, that could never happen, or who would fix the streetlights? I mean, who would do the things that we need to fix around or maintain or build anything? So, but what was odd was I learned that 40% of kids that go to college today don't know why they're going. They're just going because they've been told to. 25% of those kids changed their degree in the first year or two. That's another kind of wholly inefficient mechanism there. But the worst stat, Tyler, was only 33% of college degrees get used ever. So you have all these people out there spending all this money, borrowing this money, hopefully not. And yet 6 out of 10 of them are never going to use the product they bought. If that was a business, if college was a business, it would go out of business because you couldn't survive with that model. And I think the problem is, you just have this societal norm that says white collar people successful, blue collar people not successful. That has never been true. It certainly isn't true today, and it's only going to get more or less true as we move forward.
Having a daughter who's a senior in high school, a son a sophomore, a son who's a freshman, in the middle of this right now. And again, I think there's this element, as I fight it myself, going to school, an Ivy League institution, I have an animal science degree, a degree I don't really use today other than the cows you might see wandering around out there that I take care of. I know it fully in part. And I think the challenge is the false economy of you have to go to college. And so we see these colleges, propped up. And yet people feel disenfranchised to say, I want to go do something worthwhile, like your businesses, like the businesses that you've been a part of, where I can look and say, hey, I made that house safer today. I made that building, and so this challenge we face, how have you worked with your employees, the 200 some employees, to say, hey, whatever you do is worthwhile. A degree doesn't make you worthwhile. How have you gone through those conversations?
Well, you have to remember, it's pretty simple. You don't live to work. You work so that you can, in fact, live. Well, I would like everyone to start focusing on what the live part means, because everyone wants to wait till, well, I guess if you work hard and then you work hard in school and then you get good grades and then you get a scholarship and then you get a degree and then that degree pays you money, well, then you can start living your life. Well, I think that's completely backwards, Tyler. I think we all need to figure out, what does living look like to us as individuals? And I'm dead serious when I say that. It's as simple as getting a poster board and drawing out what you want your life to look like. In every complete facet, every colorful, concise detail. Because once you know what it is, why you're working to begin with, why are you even doing anything? Whether you're a plumber, carpenter, a dentist, or a lawyer, or a teacher, you're all doing it for a reason. And I need to know what that reason is first, because if you can identify that reason very clearly, then there's a million ways you can get there. And after all, nobody ever rolled into my driveway and saw all the things that I've accomplished. And I've done pretty good for myself. Thank the Lord. And I'm very blessed and grateful. But no one ever rolled up into my driveway and looked around and went, wow, what degree do you have? That's never happened. So it's all about, how did you grind this life out, which I'm happy to talk about, right? I'm happy to tell them that. But I just think there's this imbalance. We've had this pendulum that used to be right in the middle. 167 million people considered full employment in the US. 77 million of them did something with their hands. The rest of them were in white collar jobs of some sort. That's very balanced. Well, the pendulum started to swing where it's college or McDonald's for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And that just, like I said, it just isn't true. And it's a false narrative. And the thing is, when you look at the happiness ratios, there is some stats out there that say that 38% of white collar workers are happy with their job, but over 60% of blue collar workers are happy with their job. Now, why is that? Well, blue collar workers can control their input. They can control their output and the quality of that output. They can control their effort, their day, their time, their schedule. They can control their financial gain. It's up to them to do what they need to do to make their life work, just like it is for you. I mean, no one tells you to get up out of bed and go take care of your farm or your animals, right? You just do it. So that is the difference. There is a discipline in being a blue collar worker that doesn't always exist in the white collar work, where you can be on the 15th floor in some cubicle somewhere, being a part of a machine, and you have no idea what part you are or how you fit in. And so I think there's that little discipline piece that's different, and it's unsung. And that's why people, when they find out like how well I do or how well all of my blue collar entrepreneur friends do, they go, holy cow, I never knew that. And the simple fact is, it's just because they never asked the question.
Well, I mean, I think that, again, growing up in an agricultural background, growing up in rural America, and having that piece of me, that's why I still have this, right? And it's because I understand some of the most fulfilling days are days that I'm fixing an electric fence, days that I'm digging a hole in the ground, days that I'm putting tires on my cattle trailer that I'm going to use to haul my steers to the butcher. I mean, I could sit here and have these conversations with you, massively fulfilling, right? And I know this conversation is going to impact people. But I also know, hey, when I change that tire and make that trailer safe, it's going to impact so many people too. And I can look down at my hands and say, hey, I accomplished something. I look at that and say, that's what keeps me humble and grounded. And I stop and realize I have the virtue of that from growing up doing it. And I think that's a difference of there's so many kids that have never experienced the wonder of doing something with their hand. And so they get to college and they're like, well, I don't know. And I think that's one of our challenges we have. We don't offer kids enough opportunity to do things with their hand so they can explore it, to say, oh, that's really what's going to be fulfilling for me.
Well, they're all victims of this triple threat, this perfect storm that I call it. So when I was in high school, I'm sure you were the same. As you were growing up, if I wandered the hallways in my high school, I could see, we had shop class. I could see someone changing a transmission on a Mustang, or someone welding something, or wiring an outlet, or doing someone's hair or nails, or baking something, or cooking, whatever. And that's where people accidentally discovered how cool it was to do things with your hands and how fulfilling that work was. Well, they got rid of those rooms and they filled them with computers instead, which I understand we all had to learn computers. I get that. But the balance of one for the other was a tragedy, in my opinion, okay? Because now those kids don't get to, again, accidentally discover how cool that is. That's number one. Number two, you're out there fixing fences and putting tires on your trailer. I'm planting bushes and raking mulch and I still do that. I did it when I was a kid. I planted hundreds of trees when I was a kid. I still do that. I love it. Flowers, the beds, making sharp edges. I still do all that stuff. And I encourage other people in my family to do that. So there is that stand back moment, Tyler, where you get to lean back on your shovel and look at that beautiful landscape bed or my rose garden, which is enormous, or whatever, and go, holy cow, I had everything to do with the creation of that. Okay. And you don't get that in some of these other positions, especially when kids are spending all day on these screens. And, building a city on Minecraft is not the same as digging in your backyard. I can tell you that for sure. So if you pair those two problems up with the fact that colleges are now experts at shaming parents and to say, give them to us or else, it's a perfect storm. And I can almost understand why parents feel this pressure so much so, Tyler. I wrote a letter on my website and I said, parents, I get it. I'm a parent too. I get it. You birthed your child, you clothed your child, you swaddled them, you fed them, you sheltered them, you taught them what you could. And now you feel that the only way you can call yourself a successful parent is if they have some expensive degree on the wall. Well, that's where we break with our thoughts there, because that part is not true at all. It's your goal should not be an overly educated child. Your goal should be a child who is independent, can fix things around the house, can do basic financial work, can solve problems, can build a life for themselves on any pathway that they choose, not just that one that has, European English translation degree that you're never going to use and you pay $100,000 for. It's really a racket, and that's what I'm trying to call out.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and it's something that I've recognized, and the challenge again as a parent, and fought with that. It's like, do I encourage my kids to go to college? Like, well, if you go for a purpose. Like my daughter wants to dance, great. Go dance and understand you can learn a lot of things. She wants to be an esthetician, right? Like, great, you can learn a lot of things in that business, but dancing is something you're never going to get to do again in your life. So go do that. My son, who's a phenomenal athlete, wants to kick. I'm like, great, go do it. But he's also like, hey, I want to start a plumbing business. Like, I appreciate that. That's awesome, man. But it's also, I appreciate this in the fact of, there's chances to go back and get a degree. And I think to go back and to get a degree, if it's worth a purpose, right? Education, it's so valuable, but make it worthwhile, as opposed to what you said earlier is, I'm going to do it because I don't know what else to do. And I think that's what gets so many people lost and end up with a degree I don't know what to do with because I'm doing because I didn't know what else to do.
You're 100% right. I mean, if there's a causal reason, if there's something that's causing you within your business, let's say you go to work for a company and they say, if you get this degree, you can ratchet up a few notches and make more money, get some promotions. Well, then there's a cause and effect there. If I want to be a doctor, I go to medical school, I become a doctor. If I want to be a teacher, I go to that school and I become a teacher. Same thing with architecture and financing or whatever. But if you're just going for one of those bland business degrees with nothing on the other side of that to connect you with, you got to be really careful there because, colleges are really good at taking the money from the U.S. government and loaning it to you, knowing they have no skin in the game. And then when they're done with you, they kick you out the door. They don't give a damn about your future after that. They don't try to find a job for you. They don't try to make sure that you take a degree that is marketable in your community or marketable, period. They don't. They will just take your money and put you in class and move on to the next victim. And again, I want everyone to know I am not anti-college. If you're going to operate on my shoulder so I can get back out on the golf course, you better know everything there is to know about a knife before you start coming at me with it. I get that. But short of that, if you're just part of the mill, part of the herd, okay, you really got to be careful because you'll find yourself 120,000 in debt with no prospects and landing the same job you could have gotten without that degree. Only now you've got this big chunk of debt to pay down, and that delays your 401k, that delays your first car, that delays your first house. That gives you a 5-year, slowdown, a second start, and everyone else is starting in front of you. It gives you a delayed onset to your life, and I think we just have to watch that and be very careful about it.
One of the things that I've gathered, kind of a transition here that I know you've done so much of. You talk about it in your book, Blue Collar Cash. In our previous conversation, you talked about it. How much you really view your role as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is to serve those that work within your business. I'd like for you to just touch on that a little bit and kind of we'll then take and journey, how do you see that as really that's the role of you as a leader?
Well, if you look at any business, they are kind of like linear creatures, okay? There is input from the one side, and that could be people, it could be materials and supplies, and then creation happens. You create a service or a product or a software or a thing. And then that thing has a price attached to it. And then it is sold and delivered. And then you hopefully get paid upon that. And then there's profit at the end of that line. Well, you as a business owner, as a leader, you're always at the end of that line. I don't know any business person that started paying themselves on day one before anything happened. Okay, you can't do that. I mean, you could, but you'll go down pretty quickly. So I've said this in front of my staff so many times. I literally can't get what I want, nor can my company get what it wants or needs until all of you get what you want for yourselves first. It's absolutely true. If you look at any company, though, the people that are creating these products and services and results, that happens long before the company profits, right? So why wouldn't you then want everyone within your organization to win as much as they can for themselves? Because then you and your company will win ultimately anyway. So my whole philosophy on leadership is I want to know why you're here. I want to know what you want for yourself in your life. You heard a lot of yous and yours in that sentence, right, Tyler? I want to focus a lot on your world, okay? And I want you to share with me why you're in it. Why are you here? What do you want? What color? What horsepower? What vacation? What house? What pet? What spiritual moment? What donation moment? What sports and hobby moments? Where do you want to live? What does all this look like to you? Because if I can get you on the path to winning for yourself with and through my company, then the company is going to win because it's going to have a lot of supercharged people within it. And that's all I say. This whole theory about, me boss and you employee and I'll tell you what to do. And I mean, that stuff is so gone out the window based on, the information flow that people have today, especially young people. You really need to figure out, if there's 24 hours in a day and you have an employee who sleeps for 8 of those and then works for you for 8 of those, there's 8 hours still there. What is he or she doing in those 8 hours? Delve into that, figure out what that is, walk that walk together with them, and then get out of the way because you're going to have a juggernaut of entrepreneurs working in your company that are going to push that company way further than you can do it yourself.
So I believe through my experiences, what I've learned, that's the only way to run a business. But yet, you and I both know there's so many organizations that run in complete opposite of that. Meaning it's all about me as the owner and my job is to burn up. I had this theory years ago are you an incubator? What you just told me is an incubator. I'm going to grow this person, incubate them like an egg that becomes a whatever it is. Or I'm an incinerator. I just burn them up and go to the next one. I believe in being an incubator. You told me being an incubator, and yet we see so many people that are incinerators. Why do you think leaders and business owners choose to be incinerators rather than incubators?
Well, because they actually believe the story of their own ego. They actually believe the story that they matter more than they actually do. I mean, when I say to these people, I've seen these people. When I say to them, if you want to be any good to your company, the first thing you need to do is become irrelevant to it. And they look back at me, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. I do this, and they start pounding their chest, Tyler. I fixed this, I yell at this person, I created that, I motivated this, I rebuilt this, I tore that down, I rebuilt that. And then I see them, okay, they're working 70 hours a week, they've got high blood pressure, or maybe pre-diabetic because they're not eating right, they forgot their kid's first name, certainly don't know what sports they play in, and they never have any time off. So I'm like, okay, you go ahead. Good on you, mate. You run that program and see how long you last. And then they come back at you and like, yeah, I can't find anybody to work and nobody wants to stay. And these kids aren't loyal these days and my business is stagnant. Well, no kidding. Okay. No kidding. Can we put those two things back together again and figure out why this is? So they literally have to get out of their own way. They have to drop the ego. Nobody cares that you're the owner. Nobody cares you're the boss. I guarantee you nobody cares that you have the parking spot right by the front door. It's all just this, it's all a charade, okay? You show me a guy who creates winners within his organization, winners that win for themselves, that require less management, by the way. They require less motivation, by the way. They require less screaming at, by the way. You show me that guy, and I'm going to show you someone who's got something on the ball. And I'm sure I will also see a trajectory of their company going hockey sticking up in the air versus just stagnating like you see so much today.
I appreciate the fact that you point out it's the ego, it's the lack of humility, it is really the identity. There's so often I've seen this with people that they say, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a business owner, so I don't have anyone tell me what to do. In my opinion of that is like, well, that's not really what goes on, because the business owner, everyone tells them what to do. The customers, the employees, like, no, you're the bottom of the barrel when you're the business owner. Now, there's a lot of great opportunity because you get to cast a vision, you get to take people with you. There's a lot of fun in the journey. But the business owner that says, I want to call the shots, they're not someone that you just point out that I think people want to work for, because they end up, using them up. That isn't what being an entrepreneur, in my opinion, a high quality leader is about. It's about serving people, being the bottom. Man, that's how you get the best.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we can prove this point real simple. Look at the NFL. Okay. So I would bet
what team is what team are you a fan of? Are you a disenfranchised Browns fan like me?
I'm a totally depressed Browns fan. I really, really am. I mean,
right.
I don't know.
It's a painful existence.
I wish the guy would either sell the team or get serious about winning. I mean, come on, man. It's so bad. Anyways.
Hey, we might get the number 1 draft pick.
Yeah. Well, if you're in the game just to get great draft picks, okay, that's good too, I suppose. But
that's a whole different coach. So the NFL. I took you away from the NFL.
No, it's so think of it this way, okay? I would bet you that if you went into any bar, you could ask the people in that bar, the younger people especially, tell me the name of the quarterback for every team, the star running back for every team, the wide receiver for every team, and they could name all those people, okay? Now, ask them to name the general manager of that team. Yeah. They could not. They could not. Yeah. Maybe the head coach, but not the general manager, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it's supposed to be, okay? Because the owner's not out there throwing a football. He's not kicking field goals. He's created an organization of winners. And that's how you need to treat. I mean, I'm not a huge NFL fan, but that's how you need to treat your business. Your business, you need to show off the people and their accomplishments within it, and not even care about who you are. I mean, what does it matter? As long as you have a great family life and you can do the things you want for yourself, and you can get the things that you have on your own vision board, which I still have. I still have vision boards all over the place. If I can accomplish those things, then living well is the absolute prize. It really is. And, I don't need people to say, oh, there's that guy, he owns that company. No. If I lined up all 200 people in my parking lot, I would be pissed if you could figure out that I'm the boss or the owner. If you know what I mean, pick out the boss or the owner. I'd be mad if they picked me, because I don't want that piece. My piece is, how good are the people within the company winning? And then because of that, watching this thing drive. I like to hover up 50,000 feet so I can see 1 mile out, 5 miles out, 10 miles out. That's my real value to the company, not down in the trenches, fighting the fight.
But sometimes being in the trenches allows you to see that time, like you said earlier. So yeah, there's days I want to be down in the trench, so I know what's going on, what we're dealing with, but I also know my responsibility is to do that, so that way I can see 10 miles ahead.
Yeah, you're exactly right. When you're hovering and you look down and you see something that needs attention, you go down and do that. But then you get back to hovering again, because if you stay down there for a long length of time, you don't get the vision anymore. You don't get to see what's coming 5-10 miles out. And that's the difference. The ability to be a visionary means that you can hover above, plug yourself in anywhere you want, but then get back to hovering, okay? Because that's truly how you drive a vision forward.
Going back to the NFL, and as you were sharing that, the idea that we don't know who the owners are. The owners that we know are the ones that have made a mess of it. The Woody Johnsons of the Jets, the Jerry Jones of the Cowboys. You look at the teams that are successful. I mean, the ones that have just routinely been successful, they do it right in and out, in and out. The only reason you know the owner is if people in the organization are saying, hey, I appreciate the owner because they've allowed us to have this success. when the Patriots were on their, transcendent move with the Browns coach, right? When they were on their transcendent move, it was, Kraft allowed that to happen, right? Because he took over the ownership and allowed that to happen. It's like, hey, go do it. He had his mix and match where he didn't feel like he was valued, so he got his fingers in the pot and it all fell apart, right? But I look at that example you said is, when owners are too visible, going back to that idea, it's about me, it's about me. Well, that organization struggles consistently as opposed to the one that just, man, they accomplish and just really do more than what their parts would allow because the leader, it's Jim Collins. It's a pinnacle leader, a level 5 leader who you don't even know who they are.
Yeah, if you think about it, look at the head coach of the Chiefs. He has fun with his people. He does commercials with his people. He takes input from what they want to do. He's not this overarching crazy person. And even the Hunt family, when you look at them, how gracious are they as winners? You know what I mean? How gracious are they throughout the whole process? It just seems like a first-class organization from top down. But he allows his players to win, and he allows his players to be visible, and he allows his players to do the things that they want to do for themselves, and then his organization benefits from it. So I think we're on the right track here. It's just that when I see people struggle, it's because they've almost let their company run them versus them running it. And they don't get out of that cycle. They stay in that cycle for a very long time. And it's only until they realize that by letting go, you're going to get growth. I mean, your child will never ride a bicycle if you don't ever let the bicycle go. And therein lies the difference, I think.
Well, in my opinion, what I've experienced that there's a fear of if I'm irrelevant. And it's letting go of that insecurity and saying that I'm only relevant if I do X. It's like, no, you're relevant if you find your purpose in place. And I think that's what you just pointed out is sometimes in whether it is, being a mason worker, is it, someone that is, I'm digging ditches because I can do that and I do it well. And I really engage the team to where people feel like they're building a masterpiece when they're digging a hole in the ground. That the great adage I've heard, a guy walks up to 3 bricklayers and asks the first one, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm laying bricks. And the second one's like, oh, I'm building a wall. And the third one's like, I am building the greatest cathedral ever. And they're all doing the same work. And that took a leader to help create that third person to see that vision. How do you do that in your company?
Well, first off, you have to have coinciding drives. Okay, so my drive is to grow the business by creating healthy workplaces or healthy spaces for people to live. A basement is a place that could be used. You can put a finish room down there, a workout room, craft room. You can put a carpentry room down. You can do whatever. So people are paying for this space and not using it. And if they're not careful, it becomes a very unhealthy place, with mold and mildew and dry rot and all those things. And now their kids are on, the breathing machines and they need all kinds of medications and whatnot. So you start off with the premise that we're creating healthy living spaces for people. At the same time that we're doing that, we're also creating value for our employees because they have a place to work, they have a place to thrive, they have a place to feel like they're in control, and they have a place to then create their destiny, their future, the way they see it, the way they've designed it. And so if you have a lot of those coinciding drives, that's really where the magic is, because they're selfish, and I want them that way, in the fact that they work for themselves first and for this company second. They're not selfish at the detriment of somebody else. They're just focusing on them and what they want their life to look like. And again, if you gather enough of those people together, it creates this momentum. And this momentum drives the company, drives the growth. And then pretty soon you're doing things like, getting 4.8 on Google, which is really hard to get in a consumer business, really hard. We're working on 4.9 right now. You start working on getting a great reputation. Then you start working on giving back, because it's incumbent upon everyone who's successful to give back to others. And so even the folks that are in the organization here, we have a dozen different ways that they can give of their own time, talent, and treasure along with the company to go help others. And so then there's this fulfillment that happens there. So now you have this job where it's more than just a job, it's kind of a lifestyle. It's kind of a place that you create your world the way you see it. And again, as long as your corporate drives or motivations align with the motivations of the people within it, that's where synergy and momentum happens. And man, like I said, get out of the way. It's good things are going to happen.
So taking what you just shared, and I've recognized that the generations in the workplace, whether it's the golden to the baby boomers to Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, each one of those have a different temperament or viewpoint, what you just said, as far as what do we want our work life to look like? What do we want our impact on our society? How do you work within your entire organization, the culture of organization, to bring what you just said to the forefront for all of them? So you're not facing this, what you brought up earlier is like, oh, the younger generation, they don't want to work. Well, I believe, and I think you and I collectively is like, no, that's not the case. And I think it centers upon what you just brought up. But how do you blend that within all the generations you have in your company?
Well, each one of us has the ability to think independently for what we own. I mean, just put it to you this way. I don't know what your favorite car or truck is. I don't know what your favorite color is. I don't know what your favorite house looks like. I don't know what your favorite vacation is. I don't know if you're a workout guy or if you're a runner or if you're a sports guy. I don't know if you have pets. And if so, what color, what kind, what their names are. I don't know those things. Only you know that stuff, Tyler. And every one of us has their own barometer. Every one of us can set our own nirvana level at where they want it to be. I want to live this way. I want to live this way. I want to live at this level. I want to live at that level. Well, those levels require differing performances. Okay, those levels require different workloads and different expectations and whatnot. So I would just say this. In the book, I talk about comfort, peace, and freedom as this golden triangle kind of thing. And as long as you can look in the mirror and say, I'm comfortable, I'm peaceful, and I'm free. Okay, I have a comfortable, peaceful, free life. Then I don't care what the level is, because you've just beaten 99% of the population out there who can say that. So set your own level, picture what your perfect nirvana is, and then go for that. And if someone's level is higher or lower, who cares? You were focused on what you wanted. Get off the whole social media comparison stuff. Well, she looks like this, so I need to look like that. She's this tall, I need to use that lipstick or that, whatever. Get off of that stuff, because I'm not saying don't go there, because there are good things. I learned golf lessons on Instagram. I think it's a great place. But I have never gone on Instagram and said, man, I feel bad because I don't look like him or her, or I don't do what they're doing. I set my level to where I know I want to be and I'm happy. And when I hit those levels, and I can do two things. I can either say, well, cool, I'm there, I did it, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm going to kind of maintain this. Or I can say, let's bump that a little bit and see where I can go next. It's really up to the individual, but our own level of nirvana, that's the key to it. And that's why different generations work well here, because they all have their own things that they want, and they're all right. No one's right, nobody's wrong. So it works out well that way.
As we're getting close to wrapping up in this time, there was something I really grasped from your book. And I think this is a challenge as someone who's kind of a intense, a go-getter and go. And I gathered you learned that a bit from your dad, the Marine, who was just driven. But I also sensed this tremendous amount of empathy and compassion. And you point to in your book that you got that from your mom. Explain to me how, or through the process of the years that you took and you were able to really blend those together to be the leader you are today.
Well, it's funny because I And by the way, that's probably one of the best questions I've ever had. So thank you for that. Um, you know, I call my father the imperfect perfectionist because he wanted everything just absolutely perfect. I mean, the white walls had to be white, the wire rims had to be perfect. No, I had to take toothbrushes to the car to get the wax residue. I mean, do it again. Not good enough. Do it again. And that was good most of the time. There are times when it wasn't, which is why I call him the imperfect perfectionist. But I learned a lot from him. I mean, there's a lot of discipline involved in that, and I love that. And I'm so glad that I learned that. My mom, on the other hand, was the perfect imperfectionist, meaning she was so good at just kind of putting the pieces back together and keeping us all tight. My dad traveled a lot, and she could make. I mean, we had nothing when we were younger. She could make pizza crust so thin you could read the newspaper through it because she had to stretch her dollars. Okay, I mean, you remember something called SHIT on a shingle? Okay, we ate a lot of that stuff. But she was so good at just kind of like keeping the place warm and loving and kind and gentle and fixing bruised egos and doing all those things when we were younger and putting us back together and keeping us together. So it was kind of a perfect blend of those two. And people think that I got like 50% of each one of those people because I am insane about parking my car straight in the garage. But I also know how to take a moment to be spontaneous with my granddaughter or take my dog for a walk in the park or something like that. So it's I'm blessed to have such great parents. I really am.
Well, as someone who, I would say there's a penchant of me that probably leans more on being like your dad than your mom, but understanding absolutely I need to be more like your mom. And the question really comes from is like, did you just innately figure that like happen, or did you figure that out over time? And this is what I would say, being a leader is really being 50% of each. It's having those standards, expectations, and helping people get there and like living that yourself. But it's also saying, hey, Ken, man, I appreciate you. You tried your best. You did your best. That's what's important.
That is really a great question too. And I would say this, one thing I learned early on is I am one person. Okay. I can't do it all and I don't want to do it all. And I would rather have other people share in their wins right along with me because I don't want to do all this winning by myself and look and turn back at the people behind me and go, yeah, I did this off of all of you guys. I just never really wanted to do that. So for me, I learned early on that, while you want all your dump trucks perfectly parked and perfectly clean, because I mean, you want all these people to march around like they do in the Marines, you do have to let some of that go, or you're going to drive yourself crazy. And so allowing those people to think more for themselves, control more for themselves, run their departments, and me stepping back and letting go of some of that stuff, I could see very early on how much benefit there was to that. And so I decided not to be that that perfectionist. I decided to be someone who was going to be real close to the middle, have your standards, have your your morals and your values and your codes, but also allow life to happen because things are going to happen, and try to make the best you can of all of it.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And I think there's probably an element where you've taught that to a lot of people by, going and digging that ditch and saying, hey, there's a standard, but there's also, hey, it's digging a ditch. You don't know where the rocks are going to be. And you just, hey, let's do the best we can. I think back when I was 19 working on a farm and, one summer day, the owner of the farm, pretty large farm, came to me and said, hey, I'm working for you today. This is the project we're working on. You tell me what you need me to do. And that comes back in this conversation of an owner saying, hey, I'm not bigger than you, but I can learn from this and you can learn by me being here. And I think there's an element you probably at times you've done that without even realizing you've done it.
Well, yeah, I love that example. And for me, it's all about, when we talk about these goals, and you heard me say before, I want to know what's happening for you in your life so you can do what you want for yourself. I tend to document that stuff in the hallway here. So we have this huge black glass board. It's like 10 feet long and 8 feet tall. And we have it filled with these little goals that people go up to the board and they write their goals on it, and they date it and they sign it and they break it down into pieces and parts where it's perfectly, in action, ready to rock and roll. Everybody knows when everyone else is starting, when everyone else is finishing. You can see it right there. They know what the goal is. It's wonderful. But in order to achieve those goals, they have to perform. No matter if they're performing here or somewhere else, they still have to perform. And so it is really nice to give them license to say, the goals that you hit are a direct correlation to the effort you put in, whether it's here or anywhere else. So, I'm going to be grateful for the time that you spend here working on your puzzle, which is your life, knowing that you may be here 2-3 years and then you may finish this puzzle somewhere else. But I'm going to be grateful for the time that I got with you here, because you were chasing something and you made the company better for that. Whether you finish the chase here or somewhere else, that's going to be what life does to us. But I'd be happy if you spent your whole time chasing it here, because you're a great person and you do good things. And I have a lot of people, Tyler, that have been here 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years. Lots of people. So people have chosen to stay within that environment. But to correlate the two, I want them to know that it isn't my company that's going to make them win. They're going to make themselves win with and through wherever they end up working. And I get to enjoy the time that they're here while they're here.
Man, I love it. You had mentioned earlier that not only do you have this book, Blue Collar Cash, but you have a course that goes along with it, a path to a successful life. I'd love for you to share with the audience listening and watching and a little bit more about that and where they can get it.
Well, you can go to kenrusk.com and see it there. So many times I've seen people that have libraries and they've read all these books, and I always was curious, hey, what did that book teach you? Well, I don't remember, but it was a great book. So I said to myself, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to make sure that I absolutely force people to change their lives. I'm going to force them to do it, right? So I built this course and I said, look, I don't want my book just to sit on the shelf and become what they call shelf help to people. I want people to actually change their lives. So I built this real simple course. I think it's $179. You get a free book with that. And I donate most of that money to charity anyway. So it's 8 simple sessions. Each session is about 45 minutes. It really shows you how to think forward for yourself. It shows you how to take control of your thoughts, how you can take control of your future, your visions. And it's a lot of fun, and it's all online. You get to listen to me talk 8 times for 3 minutes at a time, and then you go off and do your thing. And it's a lot of fun. I hope people take advantage of it. And again, first off, I guarantee you're going to think differently as soon as you take this thing. I guarantee you from the day one. But also know that if you're helping yourself, you're also helping somebody else at the same time in the community. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Man, I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ken. Thank you for your time. And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for being here. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit subscribe and the bell so that way you get notified whenever we drop new videos, new podcasts, as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you could do a favor, if you could rate and review this episode so more people can find impactful leaders like Ken, I and Ken would appreciate it. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.